Good evening. New York City returned to something like normal business today after suffering an electrical power failure that lasted in some areas for 27 hours. While federal, state, and city agencies began urgently investigating the cause of the blackout, New Yorkers are still counting the economic cost of the city from one day of lost business. But more painful is the task of surveying large areas of the city where the blackout brought an orgy of looting. More than 3,000 people were arrested Wednesday night and Thursday in the act of pillaging hundreds of large and small businesses in poorer areas of the city, Brooklyn, Harlem, and the South Bronx. In many cases, police were powerless to stop the looting because the crowds helping themselves were too large to control. Every kind of business suffered, from supermarkets to jewelry stores, leaving stretches of whole blocks devastated, windows smashed, steel security shutters torn down, some buildings set on fire. The Small Business Administration today declared the 5 boroughs of New York City and Westchester County a disaster area, making businesses eligible for special loans. Jim?
Robin, a New York police official described the looting rampage as the night of the animals. Others say it was more of a night of the oppressed, the have-nots of society releasing their anger on the haves. Well, tonight we examine why so many people in the ghettos of New York did what they did when the lights went out, and is it strictly a New York phenomenon, or one that potentially exists in all American cities? Robin?
One of the still uncounted victims of the looting was Syl Williamson, 43-year-old owner of a sporting goods store on Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn. Mr. Williamson started his store 13 years ago with a $700 investment. Last year, he grossed over $200,000. In a few minutes on Wednesday night, he lost $100,000 worth of stock. Mr. Williamson, how did it happen, as far as you know?
How it happened, I don't know. The only thing I know as to what happened, the lights went out, and when I reached my store, people were in it.
How much later did you reach your store after the lights went out?
I reached my store approximately 25 minutes after the lights went out.
And were you able to stop or save anything?
I was able to stop the looting in my store only because of the rapport that I have with the community in general.
What did they take?
They took sneakers, basketballs, football shoes, everything of value that I had in the store.
What kind of neighborhood is it where your stop is?
I think the neighborhood is a good neighborhood. It's black people, middle class, poor, some middle class, some even wealthy.
And what kind of people did the looting, do you know?
I would say all types of people did the looting. I'd venture to say that no, you can't say what type of people did the looting because the person that you would say brother to you today, and you would never even think of him as looting, and you would see him carrying your stuff down the street.
People you knew?
People I knew.
How do you feel about that?
It's something that happened. It happened, and it just happened.
Are you insured for that kind of thing?
No, not for that kind of thing, no.
How much insurance were you able to carry?
I think my broker told me today that we carried $15,000 worth of insurance.
Is that all the insurance you can get in an area of New York like that?
In that area, that's what the broker told me that was all we could get.
What is the future of your business now?
The same as it was when I first started. I started with nothing, so I just go back and start again. The only thing I have now is more experience and more friends.
More friends?
Yeah.
Friends have come out since this happened?
Yes. There's been outpouring of friends. Like most people only refer to the looters, but they don't think of the kids that didn't loot and the kids that stayed with me the rest of the night to help me to secure my store and keep other people out. And as soon as it got light enough that we could see, to try to pick up what was lost and sweep the garbage out into the street and try to pick and salvage what was. No one speaks about that. And yet those are friends.
How do you feel about it all now? How do you explain to yourself why it happened?
Well, I think all things happen for a reason, and the reason is not mine to question. It's just that I know what I have to go about and do.
Which is?
Just continue just start over and as though nothing happened.
And you will stay there and do that?
I have to stay there. It would be a loss to the community if I left.
Well,
I couldn't let what I've developed within the community in 13 years be wiped out in one night anyway.
Well, thank you. Among the thousands of people out in the darkened streets of Brooklyn on Wednesday night was this 18-year-old high school graduate. What were you doing when the blackout started?
At first, I went to see my girlfriend, you know. And then, you know, I was going up on the elevator. I'm lucky I got up before, you know, it blacked out. But when I did, you know, I got upstairs, everything just went black, you know. First thing that came to my mind, you know, I wanted to go outside where everybody else was at. So that's when I went around to my neighborhood, St. Felix Street and Fulton Street, you know. And then that's when, you know, everybody decided to break into Mullins or Siemens or whatever place they can, you know, to get some merchandise.
When you say everybody decided, how did it happen? How did they decide?
You know, first thing that came to their mind is a way to make some money, they was going to do it. Any way they can make some money, they was going to try to do it.
And what was the atmosphere like? What was the mood like? Were they happy? Were they angry?
They was happy when the lights went out.
What did they say? What sort of things did they say?
Well, I'm not allowed to say it over the television, but, you know, they said bad things, you know, like curses and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, you can say what you like. What did they say?
They said, oh shit, the lights is out, let's break in this place and get us some money. You know? And the first thing they did was pop the lock on the door and everybody went in. People from different neighborhoods went in.
And about how many people were there?
I say at least 25, 30 people inside the place.
Yeah. Were you excited yourself? Scared?
I was scared.
You were scared?
Yeah, because, you know, maybe I thought the cops would catch us, you know, and then I have a record now for doing something I shouldn't have been doing. But, you know, at the time, everybody thought it was all fun.
What did you do yourself?
I went inside. I got a couple of, you know, tables and lamps.
And why did you do it?
Because everybody else was doing it. I want to be like everybody else. I thought I could make some money.
Mm-hmm. Were there cops around at the time?
At the time, the cops didn't come around for about 3 hours.
Were people taking basically what they needed or just anything they could get their hands on so that they could sell it?
Well, most of the people that was poor was taking stuff they can use in their homes, like, you know, couches, beds, televisions, anything they can, you know, to replace the other stuff they have in the house, you know.
Yeah. And what did you do with the stuff you took yourself?
Oh, I kept it. And I sold some, you know.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about it?
Now, you know, I feel, you know, why did I do it? I be saying to myself, why did I go out there and do that?
And why did you?
I wanted to do it, you know, go out there and be like everybody else. I thought the lights was off, I could make, you know, some money, have some fun, so I went out and did it.
What was describe again what the kind of feelings were in the crowd that you were in. You said some of the things they were saying, but what kind of a mood was it? Was it a holiday mood, or was it, some people have said it was a kind of mood like it was the one night off of the year or something?
It was like a holiday mood for everybody. For the poor people, you know, it was a holiday, you know, because, you know, they may not have enough money, you know, to buy these things, so they figure right now, while they got a chance, the lights was off, they was going to get it. And so they went out and they got what they wanted.
Were most of the people who did that people who do not have jobs or unemployed?
That's right. I have a lot of friends that was with me who was unemployed.
But you have a job yourself?
Yes, I have a job.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Not all of the public officials out on the streets the other night were New York policemen or firemen. Another who was there was Congressman Herman Badillo, a Democrat who represents the South Bronx district of New York, one of the hardest hit with the looting. The congressman is also a candidate for mayor of New York in the upcoming Democratic primary. Congressman, Mr. Williamson just said that everything happens for a reason. What reason would you give for what happened in the South Bronx and other areas of the city?
I think the reason is that people feel that there's not opportunity for them in the cities. We do have two societies. There have been warnings about that for some time, and not enough people feel that the problems of the city are their problems and that the city is their city. And when you have a disaster that strikes, some people separate themselves from it and they tend to feel that they can take advantage of it. That's one of the very serious problems that we have in this country, not just in New York City.
Congressman, the young man just told us what went through his mind when the lights first went off. Let me ask you this. When the lights first went off, did you think to yourself, uh-oh, there's going to be looting, or there's going to be violence, or there's going to be trouble in South Bronx? Was that your immediate thought?
Well, I've been through these things before, and I did think of that. I've had many unfortunate experiences in the riots of 1967. I was in Attica, for example, and I've been in prison riots, so this is one other of the very unfortunate experiences that I thought was going to take place, and it did.
So it didn't surprise you at all?
No, because I know that there is that alienation. It's very clear. There's a lot of hostility and resentment, and unfortunately it grows because there are more people now in New York City who are poor than there were 10 years ago, for example. And there's more of a feeling of hopelessness, because even with a new administration in Washington, there is still no national urban policy, no program to provide jobs, such as the young man was talking about. Long after a new Congress has convened, we still find that the first priority is not for providing jobs for all.
Congressman, in your opinion, does this economic situation that exists for so many people in the ghettos, in your opinion, is that a justification for looting stores and setting them on fire and for what happened?
No, not at all. It's not a justification, no, not whatsoever. On the other hand, there is really no justification either for having the kind of unemployment that we have in this country and in this city, especially when you get a 40 to 50% rate among the young people 16 to 25. That's not justified either.
Congressman, you were out there, and you were out trying to stop people from looting and doing all of this. What did you say to young people that you would stop in the streets? And what did they say to you?
Situations I got involved in were crisis situations involving the police and the groups. The idea in these things is to try to keep things from escalating. I must say that New York City police are very professional, and we were able to diffuse a number of situations in the South Bronx which could have gotten worse. And I think if we had not had a very professional operation by the New York City Police Department, we probably would still be having difficulty in New York City.
But did you tell any young kid, hey, stop this, don't do this?
Yeah, I told them to move away, and we've agreed in a number of cases, for example, that I would disperse the crowd by walking with them for several blocks so that they followed me along, and then gradually some of them dispersed. I also got on the radio, and I asked the people to get their kids off the streets, to prevent them from forming a large crowd, because a large crowd attracts police, and that attracts more people, and that leads to confrontations.
All right. Congressman, thank you. Another view now from the well-known author and playwright James Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin grew up in Harlem and is the author of many well-known books, including Another Country and his most recent, If Beale Street Could Talk. His plays include Blues for Mr. Charlie. Mr. Baldwin, was it anger that the darkness brought out the other night?
Anger is too simple a word. Let me overstate my case a little bit.
All right.
It is significant to me that the looting occurred among the looted, if you see what I mean. At the level of, the economic level of the ghetto, and everybody knows this, is not only beneath that of the nation, which is one thing. It is also, one talks in this country about upward mobility, but a person trapped in the ghetto with no job and no future, and trapped in a consumer society which demands every day, every hour, every day that he lives, that he buy this and buy that. He is not living, for example, in South Africa. No, he is not living in a poor country. He is living in one of the richest, in the richest country in the world, and living on a level of poverty which in this country is utterly intolerable, you know, and has no justification whatever. Now, I grew up in that misery, and I do not want, you know, to see my brothers and my children in the streets carrying away television sets and breaking windows and turning into what society has always said they were. But I cannot offer them an alternative. I haven't got a job to give them. Now the society, which has promised us, after all, life and liberty for all, has betrayed that promise. And when that happens, you create, and the society creates every day a group of people, endless groups of people who have nothing whatever to lose. And when that happens, you can't blame those people for taking what has been taken from them.
Does your idea, though, is it inconsistent with what the young man just said, that there was a holiday mood out there? Does that surprise you at all? That there was a good time?
It doesn't surprise me, no. Somebody called it Christmas in July. You see, if you live in a society which does not respect you, you have no reason to respect it. This is the root, not only in New York, as my friend just said, but all over the country. And the lights go out in Detroit tomorrow. You will have the same thing for the same reason. You have created these people. You have created this misery. And you don't know, no one in the society has even addressed himself to it.
Do you see it as basically a racial thing, or is it economic, or it crosses over many things? Or
the racial thing is an American myth. You know, you, if I may say so,
sure,
have created, roughly speaking, the nigger. You know, it is you, the American people, who have put the Puerto Rican and the nigger in the streets. It is you who have assured them that they have no future. It is you. After all, I'm not my friend, that boy's age. I'm much older. But in the 50 years I've been on Earth, nothing on the level of the American promise has changed. I would go so far as to say that in the 52 years I've been on Earth, it has gotten worse. And the American people, if I may say so, and I must say so because I love my country, have become more and more cowardly, have created something they didn't know how to divest themselves of. They don't know how to let my people go.
Well, I would take from both what you have said and what you've said too, Congressman, that both of you feel that this is what happened is not a unique situation for New York, that if the lights went out in Cincinnati or Dallas or Los Angeles or Chicago, the same thing could happen?
There's no question about that. That's why when we had riots once before, we had them in many different parts of the country as well. And the conditions that existed in 1967, if anything, have worsened since that time.
But Congressman, in the blackout, it's been pointed out many times in all the many news stories these last many hours, that the blackout in 1965, there were only 100 people arrested, and there was not this widespread violence. What's happened since 1965?
Well, first of all, the blackout in 1965 was in November, a different time of the year altogether. You have to have lived in these tenement houses, as I have, to understand that even when the lights are on, people are outside in the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've seen kids playing stickball in the streets at 2 in the morning and the parents watching them because the heat rises and you simply cannot sleep. When the lights go out, people are out by the hundreds without any lights, and you have very dangerous conditions under the best of circumstances. That did not happen the last time. Secondly, you have had a promise that has not been fulfilled since then, because we had many programs, and we speak of the capacity this country has for full employment. Nothing happens. We brought in tremendous amounts of money for poverty programs, and instead of using it to rebuild the cities, that money was given out to what I call poverticians who use them for themselves. And so people see that there is money, but that it is not going on a priority basis to providing meaningful jobs. And that was something that was not available before, too.
Jim? Yes.
I don't know whether you could see him. I think Mr. Williamson had a comment on, on your question to the Congressman.
The comment that I wanted to say, that in 1965, I would say that black people had a little more self-pride than they have been robbed of since 1965. They have been robbed of self-pride without even knowing it. We live in a society where a person is told that he should do this, that he cannot learn, or that he won't learn, so he's told he can't learn, so he believes it. But I know that they are very brilliant, and if he don't know why he looted. If he gave you some reasons, but he doesn't know why he looted. I say that the media caused him to loot. The media caused him to loot because the media tells him that you have no job or there's no future for you. But it's not that they don't have jobs or there are no jobs available. It's the job that a person feels as though he's told he has qualifications for, and they find out he doesn't have the qualifications for the job, and then he can't fill the job. He has been given no work jobs and only collect a pay, and that's not a job. That's not even self-motivating. That's self-destruction. To pay a person $37.50 a week for just showing up, signing a sheet, that's not a job. And that's what those summer programs have actually ended up to be. Those are not jobs.
That's what I meant about the waste of funds that have been made available.
Those things demoralize a person. They don't, it's not coming out saying, well, I don't want you to work, so here's $37.50, just sign the sheet. No, they do it better than that. They let him sign the sheet. Anything else that happens, like things that are allowed to happen in the black neighborhood, never happens in white neighborhoods. Not.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, sir. Finish.
Not because the person they allow dice games to go on the street. That's not my way of life. That's not his way of life. But if you even ask someone, say, why don't you stop it? He'll tell you that's his way of life. I don't live like that. And I know Mr. Baldwin doesn't live like that. And I know countless of my friends and even my people that come in and shop with me don't live like that. But we only see 1 or 2% of the people that live that way, and they spotlight those 1 or 2%. They don't spotlight the other 98%.
Mr. Baldwin.
I just want to add to what my friend just said. Part of the American tragedy is that the American people have always created the nigger that they wanted to see. They're this is a very remarkable man. And the boy is very remarkable, too. And both of them are saying in another way that they're treated in the society with no respect whatever. Langston Hughes said, you treat colored people like second-class fools. Now, if you do that, there's a bill that comes in that you have to pay. You rob a man of his self-respect, he will do anything.
Robin?
Yeah, at risk of seeming very obtuse on this, let me put a question that perhaps a lot of people in our audience might put. It would seem since 1965, which was just when the first Civil Rights Bill had been passed, and then further civil rights bills, a lot of people, certainly politicians and white politicians in Washington, would argue there have been tremendous advances in opportunities and everything since then. What?
That is, if I may say so, I hate to say it, but that is a total lie. It is proof of American cowardice, even to say so. Look, in 1954, you passed, the Supreme Court outlawed segregation in the schools, right? I was in Little Rock in 1957 during one of the school battles. That's 20 years ago. I was in Boston a few months ago. Now, are you telling me that the American people delivered on any promises at all? This boy wasn't even born then.
What's your opinion of that?
The unemployment rate is much higher today than it was in 1965, to take one simple example. There's much greater poverty in all of the cities of America, especially in the northern cities, than there was in 1965. And the programs that worked during all of those years, my files in Washington are full of successful programs that turn out to be valid, but yet we cannot get them implemented on a mass basis. I can get a sweat equity program to get a gang of kids to the Renegades to rehabilitate 3 buildings in the South Bronx, but when they are successful, I cannot get it done for 30,000 buildings throughout the city. So that there really is no commitment to even trying out the solutions that we have found work.
If this is a racial stroke economic problem, and this is an expression of massive frustration for the failure to do what you said has not been done over the last 15 years, why does Mr. Williamson get ripped off? What is he a symbol of to the people who ripped him off? Mr. Williamson?
I'm not a symbol. They don't see me. When I was not visible. When I became visible, the looting in my store stopped.
May I add to that?
Now,
Yes.
Yeah.
Finish, Mr. Williamson.
I say, when I became visible, the looting in my store stopped. They only saw, like he said, they saw merchandise. And the merchandise that I had was very sellable on the street. And that was the total answer, because we have been programmed into believing that money is a cure-all. That's why I don't feel bitter about losing what I lost, because I still have more than I had when I started.
If the lights went out, let me ask the young man, if the lights went out again one hot night next month, would this happen all over again?
If it just come on, if it just go off just like that, maybe, most likely will happen again. But if, if they knew the lights was gonna go out, it wouldn't happen that much, because the young kids probably be scared that the people be waiting for them this time, They be guarding their store, their property.
There again, the fear ethic. In other words, see, we're programmed to respond to fear, We were programmed to respond to the gun, but we're not programmed to self-respect. See, when a person respects himself, he cannot go out and destroy his brother's property, because the people that he put out of work, he didn't hurt the store owner. Like all those stores that they destroyed in Bedford-Stuyvesant, the only people working in those stores were black people. Now, what they actually did was to put their friends' parents out of work. Some of their own friends they put out of work. The person that was able to employ 7, 8, 9, 10 people, he was also able probably to carry enough insurance to whether he want, if he wanted to rebuild, he could rebuild it in another neighborhood.
We just have a few seconds left. I just want to ask you, if this is not to happen again, what, in your view, as the politician among us, needs to be done?
We need to have a commitment to bring about change in the areas that we know how to bring about change, so we can remove the poverty in this country. We know how to do it, and we know how to provide jobs.
We have to leave it there, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Jim. Good night.
Good night, Robin.
And thank you all very much indeed. That's all for tonight. We'll be back on Monday night with a look at the crisis in the cost of car insurance. I'm Robert MacNeil. Good night. Would you ask that?